The Xiaomi Poco F2 Pro brings back the pop-up front-facing camera, which we haven't seen much of in 2020 compared to 2019. This ensures the 6.67-inch AMOLED screen isn't broken up by any notches. Poco F2 Pro features an almost completely bezel-less display, with the company quoting an 87.2% screen-to-body ratio. It offers 180Hz touch sampling for better gaming. The display does deliver HDR10+ support. The chipset in here is the Snapdragon 865 paired with 6 or 8 GB of RAM depending on the variation. This is the top-end processor available to Android phones at this time, and that should ensure great processing speeds. You will have no trouble playing games in this device. The Poco F2 Pro is also a 5G phone. Poco F2 Pro is made for the gaming enthusiasts in mind, with a massive cooling system, a large multi-layer graphite, and 9 built-in temperature sensors. It intelligently predicts and controls its internal temperature, ensuring sustained peak performance even when you are playing games for long hours. There are 4 rear cameras on the phone, consisting of a 64MP main, 5MP telephoto, 13MP ultra-wide and 2MP macro snapper. But there are a few camera features that might impress, including 8K video recording and a macro shooting mode on the telephoto lens, as well as the dedicated macro lens. It can record 8K video at 30fps and 960fps super slow-mo video at 1080p resolution. It sports a motorized pop-up 20MP selfie camera on the front. The Poco F2 Pro features a 4700mAh battery with 30W fast charging support that charges the phone fully in just 63 minutes. The Galaxy S71 5G brings an excellent amount of upgrades over its predecessor. This device is a pleasure to hold and use. The display is a 6.7-inch AMOLED panel. The display is beautiful as well. All the AMOLED awesomeness is present, such as vivid colors with the option to switch to a more natural look, deep blacks, wide viewing angles and excellent brightness levels. Thanks to the Infinity O screen, the bezels have been reduced and the punch hole for the front camera looks better than the U-shaped camera cutout we saw on the Galaxy S70's display. The S71 5G is sleek and light. There's plastic on the back, but the phone feels premium while not being slippery as a phone with a glass back. The in-display optical fingerprint sensor has been improved as well. It's much quicker and more accurate than last year, even more so than theoretically superior ultrasonic in-display sensor on Samsung's flagships. Naturally, facial recognition is supported and it works well most of the time. It is powered by Exynos 980 chipset coupled with 6 or 8 GB of RAM depending on the variant you buy. Performance in day-to-day use is excellent. There's barely any stutter or lag, and all of the graphically intensive gaming titles run well. This phone have quad rear camera setup. The Galaxy S71 5G 64MP primary camera takes 16MP photos using pixel binning, and when the lighting is right, you get really beautiful pictures. There's a lot of detail in daylight shots and good dynamic range. Color reproduction is also faithful to real life in most cases. Nighttime shots come out noisy or grainy, although the dedicated night mode tends to focus on increasing the detail in dark objects rather than controlling noise levels. The 12MP ultra-wide camera takes better photos than the S70 was capable of, at least in terms of the detail captured. The S71 also has a 5MP macro camera, which is a great addition to this setup, and the last one is 5MP depth sensor. You can record 4K video at 30fps and 1080p super slow-mo video at 960fps. On the front there is a single 32MP camera for selfies, which delivers great picture quality. It is powered by a 4500mAh battery with 25W fast charging support. It has impressive battery life and can get you up to 2 days on a single charge with light uses on Wi-Fi and a little mobile data, and a full day if you are a heavy user who tends to play games, watch YouTube videos and do other power-intensive things on their phone. If you travel a lot, the S71 has excellent endurance even when used as a hotspot. The Vivo X50 Pro comes with a 6.56-inch Full HD Plus Super AMOLED display with a punch hole cutout and 90Hz refresh rate. This model supports HDR10+. The phone also comes with an in-display fingerprint sensor for security. It is powered by the Snapdragon 765G chipset coupled with 8GB of RAM and 128GB or 256GB of storage options. As for the cameras, the X50 Pro feature an AI quad camera setup. with a 48 megapixel Sony IMX598 primary sensor, a 13 megapixel Samsung lens, an 8 megapixel OmniVision telephoto lens, and lastly an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle lens. On the front, it has a 32 megapixel Samsung GT1 sensor for selfies and video chats. The Vivo X50 Pro features a gimbal system for image and video stabilization. The X50 Pro packs a 4315 mAh battery and supports 33-watt fast charging. "2020 has been a big year for Motorola already. First its own foldable phone, the Motorola Razr, and now we have the Motorola H Plus. The H Plus isn't just a rebranded Z series phone, it's a fresh start for the company's product line. This is a device pushed to the extremes and which can compete with the best such as Samsung Galaxy and Apple handsets. Motorola has furnished the H Plus with many elements from the leading flagships. The screen is carved over the sides like the waterfall display from the Samsung Galaxy S20 and Samsung Galaxy Note 10 lines of phones. It doesn't have an IP, water and dust resistance rating, but Motorola claims its design is water repellent, and of course it contains one of the rarest of features on a flagship phone, a 3.5mm headphone jack. The display is 6.7-inch Full HD Plus OLED panel. Its large, sharp and the endless edge sides are very attractive. The display's 21:9 aspect ratio makes this phone feel narrow, meaning some people may find it awkward to use one-handed. Like many other flagship phones in 2020, you can set the H Plus to light up its sides when receiving notification. Another great feature is the 90Hz refresh rate, meaning smooth video and gameplay. The phone's specs are top tier, from its Snapdragon 865 chipset to the 12GB of RAM and 256GB of storage. The Motorola H Plus packs a traditional quad rear camera setup. The star of the show is the 108 megapixel main shooter, which can use pixel binning tech that reduces the megapixel count while effectively expanding the size of each pixel to let in more light. The phone also has an 8 megapixel telephoto camera with 3x optical zoom and a 16 megapixel ultra wide camera, as well as a time of flight depth sensor to enable bokeh effect in portrait shots. The main shooter can also capture video in 6K UHD. Pictures taken with this device looks great with rich color and great dynamic range. On the front there is a 25 megapixel camera for selfies, which delivers great picture quality. The H Plus is also 5G capable. It packs a 5000 mAh battery and Motorola claims it will last for up to 2 days. Sadly, the H Plus max out at 18-watt charging, which has been the case with the previous Motorola phones. It also supports 15-watt fast wireless charging and 5-watt reverse wireless charging. The Sony Xperia 1 Mark II comes with a 6.5-inch display that has a 4K resolution. It's a HDR OLED panel. However, the company has included a new feature that will allow for a 90Hz effect on the screen, but it doesn't simply use an actual 90Hz panel. Sony's latest flagship phone features a 3.5mm headphone jack on the top edge. The design is glass on the front and back, both of which are protected by Corning Gorilla Glass 6 technology, and it will come in either black or purple. It also has a full bezel at the top rather than a notch or punch hole. Inside the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II, there is a Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 chipset, which is one of the very best processors on the market. It offers some strong performance and be able to cope with all the tasks that most other top-end phones can do. The phone comes with 8GB of RAM to keep it running. Storage-wise, you have got 256GB of space to play with here, and that's expandable with a microSD card. 5G is one of the big talking points of Xperia 1 Mark II. There's no 4G only variant of this phone. The camera is another area Sony's put a spotlight on. The camera includes a 12 megapixel main sensor, a 12 megapixel telephoto one with 3x optical zoom, and a 12 megapixel ultra wide sensor, alongside a 3D time of flight sensor that will offer groundbreaking autofocus technology. It's using a technology that Sony developed for its alpha range of cameras, and the aim here is to give you the best shot through stronger autofocus. This technology can completely autofocus and auto exposure calculations at 60 frames per second, while the camera itself can take 20 shots in burst mode each second. But Sony claims it improves autofocus for low light conditions as well as in everyday shooting. The phone can also record video in 4K HDR at up to 60 FPS. Pictures are amazing with this camera with its stunning dynamic range and color accuracy. On the front of the phone, there's an 8 megapixel selfie camera, and Sony announced they have made significant improvements for front-facing shots. Sony has also made some big improvements to the battery on this device by increasing it to 4000 mAh on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II, up from 3330 mAh on the Xperia 1. There's also fast charging here that will allow for up to 50% charge in 30 minutes.